second period. How about a high shot to the short side for John Madden?
Welcome, everybody, to the Puck Drops here. We are our second revisiting episode. This is of the 2001 Eastern Conference champion New Jersey Devils. My team, and we will go through them. I go through their stats, go through their play and the playoff year that they had. That was an incredible year for them, with a 1 seed throughout the Eastern Conference, rolling through, but not being able to accomplish it with the second straight Stanley Cup, just as the Stars proceeded not to do the previous year, losing in 7 to the Colorado Avalanche. Look at their record, of course, first. Their record was number 1 in the Eastern Conference. It was number 3 in the entire National Hockey League, behind the Detroit Red Wings and the Colorado Avalanche. And they were a well-balanced defensive team, along with their offense, of course, and deep enough to play all the big teams, beat all the big teams. And most of their pedigree was similar to the team that had beaten Dallas the previous season. They had Jason Arnott, the great center, and he ended up, the Stanley Cup final hero, ended up scoring 21 goals, 34 assists, and 55 points in 76 games. Christian Berglund and Yuri Bicek were some young rookies that came along to play. Sergei Brylin, one of the great players in the Stanley Cup final against the Dallas Stars, came in, and the Russian played well. Pierre Dagnai, another young rookie. Patrick Elias, who had the game-winning assist, he came in and had another terrific season. Bruce Gardner, another winger, and they brought in a rookie, Brian Giunta, who turned into an epic playoff player for the New Jersey Devils. Scott Gomez, in his second full year. Bobby Holik, in his 5th year as the Devils. Valeri Kamensky, former player of the Colorado Avalanche, was brought in. Jamie Langenbrunner, a former Dallas Star, he was brought in. John Madden, he was able to play too. Randy McKay, in his first year as a late bloomer. Jim McKenzie, on the winger. Sergei Nemchinov, Joe Nieuwendyk, another former star, brought in. Jay Pandolfo, another former star. Stefan Richer was brought back. Andre Samuelson, Turner Stevenson, and Peter Sikora. So the entire Arnott line was still there. Their offense was there, but a lot of new guys, as we said, like Nieuwendyk, Pandolfo, and Langenbrunner, who all lost to the New Jersey Devils in the Stanley Cup final that previous year with Dallas, joined New Jersey, and they had some really good years that year. Tommy Albelin and Joel Bouchard, 2 young defensemen, joined the vaunted D-corps that the Devils had. Joseph Boumediene, Mike Commodore, and the ageless Kendanico, of course, Sasha Gok, Scotty Niedermeyer, Brian Rafalski, Scott Stevens, Colin White, and Andre Zuzin, who were the defensemen that were on the primary part of those great cup-winning teams before and were on this team. Goaltending, of course, started and it ended with their big-time goaltender, Martin Brodeur. And Brodeur's goalie average, 2 points. His goalie average that season was 2.32 and a save percentage of .906. He had a spectacular season. So he was the guy behind them. Scott Clemenson, a younger goalie, he was the backup, and he played well along with rookie Jean-Francois Damhaus, another Quebecite, and the longtime former Ranger veteran Johnny Van Beesbrook. So they had a full roster of goalies that could come in and start and play at any time. And so this was one of the deeper teams in the National Hockey League. And at that time, you had good teams like St. Louis, and you had good teams like Buffalo. But there were really only 3 elite teams in the National Hockey League, and it was the Detroit Red Wings, Colorado Avalanche, and this Devil team. and they were behind those two, but on top of their entire conference, winning 48 games, not only 19 regular season losses and 3 overtime losses. Absolutely incredible. So we look at the postseason. They have home ice throughout the entire Eastern Conference and home ice against any team in the Western Conference if they would meet in the Stanley Cup final that was not the Colorado Avalanche or Detroit Red Wings. And so the Atlantic Division Championship again for the Devils. They actually did not win the previous year. Philadelphia did, but they get the crown this year, and they play the 8th-seeded Carolina Hurricanes in Continental Airlines. And as the game starts, it's clearly all Devils. The first goal is Sergei Brylin, an unassisted one, 18:52 in. Only 2 minutes in. And then at the very end of the second period, Bobby Holik scores to make it 2-0 Devils. 15:20 into the second period, Bobby Holik scores another, makes it 3-0 New Jersey on the goaltender. Just looking as it looks up. Not sure. Peter Sikora made it 5:06 in for the New Jersey Devils. Patrick Elias 7:01 into the third made it 5-0. And Carolina forgot their only goal of the game on Jonas Vasicek. And Vasicek's first goal of the playoffs, first ever Stanley Cup playoff goal, was the only blemish on Marty Berdeur's score sheet. And that was a 1-0 series lead for the Devils, dominant against the team they were supposed to do very well against. Then game number 2 comes along. And on Urbe, the Devils score 2 more in this game. In game 2, 4:16 into the first period, it's Alexander Mogilny. He scores a goal on Urbe. And then 2:32 into the second period, Sean O'Donnell scores a goal on Urbe, which made it 2-0 New Jersey. And then the Devils went down a rally with a 2-0 commanding series lead, which was incredible at that point. And it was the first shutout of the playoff year for Marty Brodeur, who hadn't had a shutout since the Stanley Cup final against Dallas. And in game 3, Devils trying to get a commanding series lead. 4:44 in the first, Devils struck again. It was Bobby Holik, who was assisted by Randy McKay. 7:20 into the second frame, Scott Gomez scored for the Devils. And his first goal of the playoffs, Randy McKay scored one for the Devils. 1:35 into the second period. And 4:35 into the second period, the last goal of the game scored by Brian Rafalski for the Devils to win it 4-0. A 3-0 series stranglehold vice grip by the New Jersey Devils. And New Jersey got a second straight shutout by Marty Brodeur. And then we got to game 4, and this was a must-win. If Carolina doesn't win this game, they're swept. They weren't supposed to be competitive against the Devils, but it might have been time to start there. In Raleigh, Carolina, for the first time all series, scores the first goal and has a lead. And it's Scott Kapanen 2 minutes into the first period for the Carolina Hurricanes, and he's assisted by Ron Brindamore, whose first point in the playoffs as a Carolina Hurricane after being traded from the Philadelphia Flyers. 13:10 into the first, the Devils tie the game from the Stanley Cup final hero, Arnott. And then 8:23 into the second period, Dark Tanabe makes it 2-1 Hurricanes. 9:31 into the third, Sikora ties it for the Devils. But only 46 seconds into that first overtime, Ron Brindamore scores his first playoff goal as a Carolina Hurricane, and it's an overtime winner, and it keeps the Hurricanes alive and back to New Jersey for Game 5. This ends up being another close game and a surprise in Game 5. Josef Vasicek, 10:53 into the first period, draws first blood for the Hurricanes, and he gets an assist by Marty Jelena, who becomes a true playoff player in the next few years. Scott Gomez ties the game for the Devils and delights the home crowd. 11:41 in, or a pass by Scott Niedermeyer as well. It makes it 1-1. And 15:09 into the first period, Carolina gets another goal from Kapanen. And now it's 2-1 Hurricanes. And then with 5:47 into the third period, in comes Jeff O'Neill, and he scores what ends up being the game winner, making it 3-1. And with only 20 seconds left in the third period, Bobby Holik scores while the Devils have 6 attackers to make it 3-2, but it's not enough. And Carolina has just rattled off 2 straight wins against the Eastern Conference's best team, and they're going back to Raleigh for a Game 6 to try to push it back to a Game 7 and a potential reverse sweep. But Hurricanes magic ends there because 14:30 into the first period, Patrick Elias scores for the Devils. 15:51 into the first period, again early goal. Scotty Breland scores for the Sergei Breland, scores for the Devils. It's his second goal of the playoff year. 5:18 to the second period, Carolina gets a goal finally. It's Derek Tanabe, but that's all she wrote for the Hurricanes. 17:57 in, Randy McKay scores his second goal of the playoffs by an assist by Bobby Holik to make it 3-1. Randy McKay scores another to make it 4-1, 6 minutes into the third. And with a little over 5 minutes to play, Alex Mogilny makes it 5-1 Devils and seals the Hurricanes' fate. And the Devils eliminate the Hurricanes in 6 games. But it was a good run for a team that wasn't supposed to be competitive at all. So then the Devils go into the semis. And they play on a 7 seed that ended up upsetting the 2-seeded Senators, and it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. And in New Jersey, they are absolutely shocked in Game 1. The underdog Leafs get a goal in the second period, 3:16 in by Nikita Antropov, and 9:02 into the second, Sergei Thomas scores for the Toronto Maple Leafs by an assist by Matt Sundin, which makes it 2-0 Maple Leafs, and they steal Game 1 on the road. And Curtis Joseph gets a shutout for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had played well. And an absolute gun show in Game 2, something we hadn't seen all playoff year for the Devils, ends up happening. Devils trying not to go up to Ontario down 2-0. And so, but again, it's Markov. It's Markov who scores first for Toronto, his first goal of the playoff year. The Devils tie it. Scotty Gomez makes it 2-1. It makes it 1-1. Right, an assist by Kenny Danico, and then 5:25 into the second period, Brian Rafalski gives the Devils a 2-1 lead. Then 9:27 into the second period, Alex Mogilny makes it 3-1. Then 15:04 into the second, John Madden makes it 4-1, but then the Leafs come back. Matt Sundin, with 29 seconds into the third period, makes it 4-2. Then 4-3 at that point. 4-3. Scotty Thomas scored for the Leafs. 107. 5:59 to the third. Then I got confused with what I was reading, but Sundin, 29 seconds in, yes, makes it 4-2. Then Mogilny scores another goal, his fourth of the playoffs, and he makes it 5-3. And then Thomas scores again, making it 5-4, 5-3 again. Then Sundin scores again, making it 5-4. 9:33 into the first period, and into the third period, and then Scotty Thomas ties the game for the Maple Leafs, making it 5-5. And now this game is going to overtime. If the Leafs win, they get the 2-0 series lead. But Randy McKay ties the series with an overtime goal. And it's a really big one on a total Toronto line change. and that makes it the series tied. Now I go to the Air Canada Center with the tie series, Leafs trying to take the series lead. And 9:21 into the first, it's the Devils who get the first goal. It's Bobby Holik. But 8:52 into the second period, as the first period ends, Volek, his first goal of the playoffs, Toronto ties it in Game 3. Then Scotty Thomas makes it 2-1 Maple Leafs, 11:26 in. And 1:34 into the third, Scotty Gomez is able to tie the game at 2-2. And then it goes to overtime again. And Brian Rafalski, the young forward, 7 minutes into the overtime period, back-to-back overtime wins for the New Jersey Devils, and they have a 2-1 series lead over the Leafs. And now the Leafs are at what they seem to be a must-win scenario, because then they would be back to New Jersey in a hostile environment where they can be eliminated. So Toronto gets the first goal, Corson 14:38 into the first period, and with a minute 21 remaining left in the second period, as great defense squelched the Devils' offense, Berezin scores to make it 2-0 Maple Leafs. Patrick Elias, 9:21 in for the Devils, makes it 2-1. He cuts the deficit to 2-1, but Matt Sundin finishes it off 10:43 into the second period, which was the eventual just nail in the coffin to make it 3-1, and he tied the series there with that one. Then it goes to Game 5 with the series tied. And the Maple Leafs go into the hostile environment, and they get a goal by Brian McCabe, 9:30 into the first, and it was a good one too. In the second period, 4:33 in, Connor Cross for the Maple Leafs makes it 2-0 Leafs. Sikora ends up tying it, and for the Devils, which was huge, a pass from Eliasha as well. Arnott ties the game, a pass from Sikora, 16:50 into the second period, and again with only 4 minutes left, and again the Devils Arnott line crushing competition, but with only 30 seconds left in the third period, game winner for the Maple Leafs, it's Yoni Caberlet, and he gives the Maple Leafs a series lead. And with that, Toronto is a win away from the Eastern Conference Final and a potential Cup Final appearance. So now the Devils have to go to Air Canada Center and win to force a Game 7 back at their own rink. And it's Sikora, 4:54 into the first, that gives the Devils the 1-0 lead. Scotty Thomas ties it 5:07 into the second to make it 1-1, but Randy McKay makes it 2-1 with less than 5 minutes left into the second period. And with only 8 seconds left in the second period, Brian Rafalski makes it 4-1 Devils. 3-1 Devils, excuse me. Matt Sundin cuts the lead to 3-2 with 2:17 into the third period. But 3 minutes later, Jason Arnott makes it 4-2 and clinches that there will be a Game 7 in the Garden State. And as the Game 7s have been for the last few years for the New Jersey Devils, it's anticlimactic. But as the game starts, Scotty Thomas, 9:06 into the first, scores for the Toronto Maple Leafs with an assist by Sundin, but that's all the Leafs would get that game. Nemechnikov scores from Mogilny, the Russian line, a minute 32 into the second period to make it 1-1. 7:13 into the third period. 7:13 into the second period. Patrick Elias scores his fourth goal of the playoff year. And 2 minutes later, Elias scores another, which makes it 3-1. 14:41 in, Scott Stevens with his first goal of the playoffs makes it 4-1. And Johnny Madden caps off the wonderful night for Devils fans. 10:50 into the third, and a 5-1 trouncing of the Leafs and stomping of them, and the Devils move on to the third straight Eastern Conference Final, or second straight Eastern Conference Final. So the Devils weren't sure who they were going to get it, but since Ottawa was upset and Philadelphia was also upset and other teams as well, the Devils ended up playing a team that upset actually a really good Buffalo team that they thought they would have played as well, and a 6-seeded Pittsburgh Penguin team who upset the Capitals in the first round, and they upset the Sabres in the second round after being down 3-2, getting a 4-1 win there, and winning off of a overtime thriller Kasparaitis goal. So the Penguins found themselves a team that was floundering along after selling Yager, not sure what to do with their team. This was a team that found themselves battling for the Eastern Conference Championship. And game number 1 started in Continental Airlines, and it was the Devils and the Penguins. And Marty Straka scored the first goal for Pittsburgh, 3:06 into the first period. But that's all the Penguins would get after a great pass by Kevin Stevens across center ice. Randy McKay for the Devils, 14:09 into the first, would tie the game. A great pass by the young defenseman Brian Rafalski. And 17:04 into the second, Peter Sikora made it 2-1 Devils. And then Sikora capped it off with another goal, an empty netter with not empty netter, just a minute 20 in. Excuse me, it was a minute 20 in, and Sikora made it 3-1 New Jersey, and gave the Devils a 1-0 series lead in the Eastern Conference Final. And the Devils came in Game 2 trying to take the 2-0 series lead to Pittsburgh, but that wasn't to be. The Devils scored first, though. Pandolfo, a goal, which made it 1-0 Devils. 16:34 into the first with less than 4 minutes remaining. Sikora made it 2-0 Devils. And then Mazarov for the Penguins, 9:20 into the second, made the deficit 1. Alex Kovalev, the former Ranger, 12:17 into the second period, tied the game. Then Robbie Corbet ended up getting the game winner with almost 5 minutes left in the second period, making it 3-2 Penguins. A great play by Wayne Primo to give him the puck. And Robbie Lang made it 4-2 Penguins. The great pass by Kovalev and Marty Straka, and the Penguins tied the series. So Devils went to Civic Arena in Pittsburgh for that game number 3, and the Devils were able to do something that the Penguins had not allowed since 1975, being shut out at home in a playoff game. And Brodeur was fantastic, as none of the Penguins were able to get any shots on him. For the Devils, 36 shots on goal, only 20 shots on goal by Pittsburgh that they couldn't solve Brodeur. Brian Rafalski, 8:42 into the first, scored to make it 1-0 Devils. Jason Arnott scored also in the second period, 12:37 in, to make it 2-0 Devils. And early in the third period, Patrick Elias made it 3-0 and gave New Jersey a 3-1 lead win and a 2-1 series lead. For the second straight game in Civic Arena, the Penguins were shut out, and they got 21 shots on goal on one more of the previous game on Brodeur, but they couldn't get one past him, and the Devils got 30 shots on goal on the goaltender Johan Hedberg. and they got a lot of pucks past them, 5 in fact. 18-11 to the second period with only 2 minutes. First period, only 2 minutes remaining. Patrick Elias made it 1-0 New Jersey. 7:58 to the second, Brian Rafalski made it 2-0 New Jersey. Sikora 15:34 into the second made it 3-0 Devils. 4:17 into the third, Arnott made it 4-0. And Brian Rafalski 13:14 into the third period with like 7 minutes left, less than 7 minutes left, made it 5-0 Devils. And now the Devils headed home after winning 3 straight games back to Continental Airlines with the chance for the second straight year to win the Eastern Conference. And this time they had a chance to do it at home. And the Devils started out super strong. 57 seconds into the hockey game, Arnott made it 1-0 Devils. With 4 minutes left in the first period, Mazarov tied the game for the Penguins. 11:41 in, Arnott made it 2-1 Devils after a Bobby Holik goal that was not allowed. Bobby Holik scored to make it a legal goal, scored to make it 3-1 Devils. The Penguins came back and cut the lead in half, 13:09 into the second period. But John Madden got what was just the nail in the coffin to end it 3:32 into the third period. And that was a 4-2 coronation and 3 straight wins to the New Jersey Devils after losing game number 2 and taking the Eastern Conference. And what a deep team it was, and what a great season it was. There were 20 shots on goal by the Penguins, 23 on New Jersey. It was a good, clean, fast hockey game, and the Devils got what they deserved, the conference championship. And they were wary of the Detroit Red Wings, who ended up with Detroit Red Wings and the Colorado Avalanche were two teams that were really going to be the only teams deep enough to defeat the Devils in the Stanley Cup final or have a chance against them. And that Detroit Red Wing team, ended up losing in the first round in 6 games in overtime to the Los Angeles Kings. And so the Avalanche played those Kings and beat them. And then an incredible Avalanche team with Sakic and Forsberg and Ray Bourque and all the Sanzelic was such a deep, talented team, and they were able to win the Western Conference, and they were the President's Trophy champs. So the Devils had to start in Denver for game number 1 of the Stanley Cup final. And this is a game that, as good as the Devils have been playing, nobody gave them much of a chance, as good Colorado was. And Colorado showed it because the Devils had played some good goaltenders in Curtis Joseph and a guy like Johan Hedberg. And in the first round, they played Urbe. These were good goaltenders that could get hot, but they were playing an absolute legend in Patrick Waugh for the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado, 11:07 in, scored the first goal, and it was by Joe Sakic from Marty Hayduk. Chris Drury made it 2-0 Avalanche. 15:06 into the second period, Sakic made it his second goal of the game, made it 3-0 Colorado. Rob Blake, 5:36 into the third, made it 4-0 Avalanche. And with like 3 minutes in, Ryan Precht made it 5-0 Colorado. And the Colorado Avalanche had gotten a 5-0 win. It was just too much for Marty Brodeur, and Patrick Waugh stopped every single Devil shot that was on him, and the Devils were able to get 25 shots on Patrick Waugh, and Colorado got 30 shots on Marty Brodeur, and it wasn't enough for the Devils, of course. Came into game 2 needing they needed to close the gap, and the Devils played a much more fluent game, a much more fluid game that was necessary, of course, to win hockey games. And Joe Sakic scored again for the Colorado Avalanche, 5:58 in to make it 1-0. 14:29 in, Brian Corcoran tied the game to make it 1-1. And in the third period, with 3 minutes left, Stevenson scored the goal He was a great player in the Pittsburgh series. He scored the game winner to tie the series back to New Jersey for the Devils. The shots on goal were the Devils only had 20 on Patrick Roy. They solved them twice, and Colorado had a 20 on Marty Brodeur, and Sakic only got the only goal of the game for the Colorado Avalanche. Now to game 3, when they went to Continental Airlines Arena, the Devils trying to lock down and play that defensive side to squelch them. And Arnott scored the first goal. It was 3:16 into the first period, making it 1-0 Devils. Marty Scola tied the game, though, 10:38 into the first period for the Avalanche by Scott Podine. And 31 seconds into the third period, what ends up being the game winner is scored by Raymond Bourque from the top slot. It's his fourth goal of the season. And Dante Hinati sealed the Devils' fate 6:28 into the third period, making it 3-1 Colorado. And that was a 2-1 series lead for the Avalanche there. Then the Devils went back home in another largely tough and hostile environment against the Avalanche. But again, Colorado scored first. Strong, fast starts for the opposition, something the Devils hadn't had since the Toronto series. And Colorado was deep enough to be able to get that 1-0 lead and just stay there, where Toronto would have to have had scored. And New Jersey was really having some issues with this. But they were able to win the hockey game, as will be explained. The Colorado Avalanche, even though they scored the first goal, only had 12 shots on Marty Brodeur, and the Devils had a whopping 35 shots on Patrick Roy. Rob Blake did score the first goal. 3:42 into the second period, though, Peter Sikora made it 2-1. Made it 1-1. Patrick Elias made it 1-1. Excuse me. Chris Drury made it 2-1 Avalanche. 13:54 in. Scott Gomez, 8:09 into the third, tied the game at 2, and then with less than 3 minutes to go, Peter Sikora gets the eventual game winner against the Colorado Avalanche to tie the series going back to the Pepsi Center. The defense, though, that was a defensive game, even though it was 3-2, and there were some great goals, because if you can only have 12 shots on your goalie's going to play well, and Marty Brodeur did, and it was just good enough to win the Devils that game number 4. And it went back to Denver. And this time, the Devils scored the first goal. 3:09 into the first period. It was Patrick Elias on a pass from Sikora. That line gelling again. 10:09 into the first period, the Avalanche tied it by a goal by the young superstar Alex Tanguay. And with less than 2 minutes left in the first period, Alex Mogilny made it 2-1 Devils. 4:39 into the second period, Sergei Brylin made it 3-1 Devils. And with less than 2 minutes left in the third period, an empty netter by Johnny Madden sealed the game 4-1, and the Devils headed back to the Continental Arena with a chance to remain as Stanley Cup champions and lift it on their home ice. This was a whole point of contention that was being made by the media and by the teams of the 16 wins that were needed to get Raymond Bourque in his last season, who he had already announced for the Colorado Avalanche, the Hall of Fame defenseman, to win a Stanley Cup, and he had to get the 16 wins. And there was actually a story that went through, just a fun fact, that when they went on the Jersey Turnpike to the stadium because their bus was lost, they were on the 16th Turnpike, and the Route 16, and that reminded that they had to get the 16 wins for Ray Bourque. That's obviously just a superstition and a cool story, but a fun story. And anyway, on the ice, Patrick Roy knew he had to play absolutely out of his mind against this great Devil team energized at home. And the Devils got a flurry of shots. I mean, they got 24 shots on Patrick Waugh, most of them early in the game, and Colorado only got 18 on the Devils, but when they got them, they were accurate and they were precise. Late in the first period, with 1:58 remaining, Adam Foote, a great defenseman, scored his first goal of the third goal of the playoff year, making it 1-0 Colorado. Vladimir Niemanen, 2:26 into the second period, made it 2-0 Avalanche. Chris Drury, with 2 minutes left in the second period, made it 3-0 Avs. And with 7 minutes left in the third period, Alex Tanguay finished the job and sent it back for a seventh game against the Devils. The next thing that ended up happening was a game 7. And in this seventh game is one of the all-time great games in National Hockey League history, but my Devils did not play well in it. 3-1 against the Colorado Avalanche. It was the Avalanche who were able to score victoriously, and the young superstar Tanguay flew his wings. 7:58 into the first period, a wonderful goal over the glove side of Marty Brodeur. And that was the 1-0 goal heading into the first intermission. In the second period, Alex Tanguay made it 2-0 again, 4:57 into the second period. 2 minutes later, Joe Sakic on a power play made it 3-0 Avalanche in Game 7. And 9:33 into the second, Sikora made it 3-1. The Devils were able to get 26 shots on Patrick Waugh, but they weren't enough because Waugh played brilliantly and the defense outlocked the Devils on that game. And as the play went final and Ray Bourque lifted the Stanley Cup over his head, what a wonderful year for the Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond Bourque, it's amazing. But you almost trying to look, as we saw at the Dallas Stars last episode, what could have been. Devils had an incredible season, but they just weren't able to solve the Avalanche defense. They weren't able to solve Alex Tanguay, and they weren't able to stop the brilliance of Patrick Waugh. And so the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. And you start, especially Devils fans, but even some NHL fans, you start wondering what could have been. All right. I thank you guys for watching, and please subscribe, please like, and talk about all this to your friends. Everybody, get everybody watching this. We will be getting a third video coming up. It's going to be on the 2002 Eastern Conference champions that did not win the Stanley Cup, the Carolina Hurricanes. So pay attention for that. So good afternoon, everybody, and happy hockey. What the